And then we had something else on Disney Plus.
Yes, we did.
The beginning of the Marvel Spotlight branding.
Yes, the first of potentially many.
Yes. So Marvel Spotlight, as we were told, is supposed to be a more grounded storytelling playground with more isolated stories that you don't need to be aware of to enjoy them. You can just watch them by themselves.
Watch anything previous.
Yes. And we were concerned about the prerequisite knowledge needed for Echo.
Yes.
Because Echo made her debut in Hawkeye. Alongside Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin.
Yep.
Who made his debut in Netflix's Daredevil.
Yes.
So we were like, okay, this is great idea, and I am all behind what Marvel Spotlight is supposed to be about. But I was curious about, is this the right show to start it with?
Yeah, we were concerned that the one they've chose to start with is one that already is linked into the MCU and other things, and it was like, this feels weird.
So that is going to be probably, off the top of my head right now, the only criticism I have. They did a good job giving us the information we needed. The editing of it was weird as fuck.
So I've seen a couple of things online about the first episode being like, was kind of just a mashup of old footage.
Yeah.
Which I get. And it was like, I do agree with you. It felt weird. Like, I don't know what it was about it edited together, but obviously it jumped around a lot. And I think the issue that they put themselves in with picking Echo to be a spotlight show is they said, you need no previous knowledge. So unfortunately, they kind of had to use episode 1 to tell us all the stuff we already knew.
Yeah.
They added in some new stuff, don't get me wrong, but a lot of it was like other footage and taken from Hawkeye or different things and kind of just retold everything we already knew with a little bit of extra detail in places. But I agree, it felt a bit of a weird, like, montage almost, like mashup.
Yes. The second half of episode 1, once we got past the catch-up bit that they didn't want to call a recap because then it destroys the illusion of you don't need to know anything else.
Yeah.
After that, I fucking loved episode 1. But we were laying in bed last night watching it, and Jenna goes, I really like that episode. I was like, I did. That first half of it was fucking weird. It just felt weird. I didn't mind the reused footage.
No.
I feel like the stuff they shot as additive stuff was really well done.
Yeah.
I loved the fight scene from her point of view with Daredevil being the opposition. That felt really cool and so different. Because I don't think you're normally aware of how much the camera follows the protagonist in a fight scene. Because that's the protagonist. So you don't think until you see someone you're used to being the protagonist as the other side of it, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this feels different and I like it.
Yeah.
Anyone dissing that fight scene and saying Netflix did it better, it's the exact same. It's the exact same stuff. If you're going to sit here and say that you loved Netflix's Daredevil, but you've not enjoyed the fight scenes in Echo, they are so similar in so many ways. I don't know what you could possibly say. I think it's a bias thing. You remember Daredevil being so good that you've...
Yeah.
Because like, there are a number of shots in Daredevil where you can clearly see punches not actually landing, but it's shot in such a way that it doesn't matter.
I'd say the only kind of thing that wasn't quite there's a couple of fight scenes that feels like they wanted them to feel like a wanna, like Daredevil did.
Yeah.
A couple of times. But there was quite obvious cut moments that weren't very well hidden, like I think they were supposed to be. And maybe that's what people are picking up on as being like, oh, it's not as good because it's not as cleanly put together maybe in places. But I agree. I do think the fights are just as good as Daredevil was, and especially that one in episode 1, I thought was very good. Um, yeah,
Um,
I think unfortunately with that first half of episode 1, they just kind of backed themselves into a corner, which they struggled to solve, and the only way they could solve was with that weird like mashup.
yeah,
Um, I think not had there been no previous knowledge of Echo, they probably would have done that stuff over more episodes,
yeah.
and the show maybe would have been a bit longer. But they kind of were like, well, people sort of know who she is. We'll do this weird recap for the people that don't know, and then we can get into things. And it kind of was just like a weird hole they kind of put themselves in.
I also think that first episode being the way it was is why
Hmm.
they dropped all 5 episodes at once,
Yeah,
so that people would be more likely to binge it,
yeah. Just go. Oh,
and
well,
then
keep
they
watching,
and
see
then
how
it
it
doesn't
goes.
yeah, it doesn't feel like as big a deal. Whereas if they just drop that episode 1 and then they have to
Oh,
wait a week for the next episode, it would have been unbearable.
I
That
think.
you would have just had all of Twitter just going, "We've seen the first half of this episode in Hawkeye. Why are they just showing us Hawkeye?"
Yeah, I think they maybe could have got away with just releasing the first two, but even then, I think it would have. Yeah, you're right. It's helped them that they've dropped all 5 in one go.
My only other criticism, and I
Mm,
do think this was done for an artistic reason, and maybe I just don't agree with it.
okay.
The audio seems to not know what it wants to do, in the sense they clearly want to use Maya's deafness as a kind of linking point. There are
Yeah.
times where you like lose all the audio,
Yeah.
but and there's also times where, for some reason, even though we can hear the background clearly,
Mm.
when someone is talking just to Maya and they're signing and they're talking, they seem to be like whispering or talking quite quietly instead of talking as they normally would while signing. And that just seems a bit strange to me at times. Like, there was one
Yeah.
conversation with Biscuit where it's like they don't need to be quiet because they're worried about being heard, and he's just like whisper talking while doing it. It's like there's no. It feels like they don't want there to be too much noise because she's a deaf character, but there's a lot of time where they just kind of are in between and they decide, oh, we're not going to go no noise, but we also don't want there to be loads of noise, so we're just left in this weird kind of middle ground where you feel like you should be straining to hear something, but you can't.
I see. I wonder. Maybe I didn't really pick up on that as bothering me, but maybe I feel like I took that as I haven't experienced kind of like real life of someone signing that often to someone that's deaf. I don't know if it's sort of a thing that is actually a common thing of when people sign, they just unknowingly are like whispering what they're saying, if you get what I
Um,
mean.
so my sister speaks sign language, as part of her job or as part of
Mm,
her previous job. And they were kind of taught, because a lot of people who are deaf lip read a little bit as well,
yeah.
to talk normally.
Okay. So yeah.
Because
Okay. So it's not
if you're
a
subconsciously whispering,
yeah.
your mouth is going to look slightly different.
Yeah, yeah,
So it
yeah.
might make it more difficult for them to interpret what you're trying to say.
So yeah. So it probably wouldn't. That's weird. Then I wonder if
The one
it's
one actor I've not noticed the problem with is the actor who plays Henry. He talks completely normally while signing. It's just a couple of scenes it's felt a bit weird. And I'm not sure if it was an artistic choice, an actor has just
not.
assumed they need to whisper, or
Yeah.
what.
Maybe.
It's felt a little bit weird at times.
Mm,
And I think that's because of the choices in certain scenes to have a complete lack of noise, and
yeah.
then
Possibly.
this weird middle ground, and then normal. The weird middle ground has felt kind of unnecessary.
Yeah. I
Um,
get you. I
but
have to say.
overall, I've been really negative for the first 5-10 minutes here. Overall, I have really enjoyed the show so far.
Oh yeah, like the story that they're telling, I'm really enjoying, and I'm actually really enjoying this sort of mixing of mysticism with the like original Native American like that
Yeah,
history of things. Uh, but yeah, the overall story in this whole like her going back to her hometown, thinking Kingpin's dead, um, obviously us knowing he isn't.
yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I've been enjoying the story. My only concern with this series, and we haven't, I don't think you've watched ahead either, but
No, I haven't. I'm only up to episode 3.
yeah, considering we're up to episode 3 and
Mhm.
how the story sits, I feel like 5 episodes is really short.
I am going to assume that this is leading directly into Daredevil Reborn.
I don't know if it is because it's meant to be a standalone thing, right, with Marvel Spotlight. So in
I think
theory,
Spotlight is standalone. I don't think
yeah, I
I
don't know
don't
if
think everything within it is supposed to be standalone.
I
I
get
don't
you.
know. I'm pretty
I
sure Marvel Spotlight is just supposed to be Marvel Street level,
I get you. Yeah,
and Kingpin's going to end up being the big bad of Marvel Spotlight.
I'm intrigued to, I feel I have a feeling we're gonna get to the end of the 5th episode. I'm gonna be like, I feel like should be more here, but
I, I
that's
guess I guess the
depends how it
the
concludes.
it doesn't massively depend how it concludes, but bearing in mind we know she can't beat Kingpin because if they kill off
Yeah.
Kingpin, they will receive backlash unknown to anyone because Kingpin is literally New York's big bad. He's perfect to every New York based street level villain. You can literally have them all fighting him in different ways at the same time, and it's not a problem.
Hmm.
Um, so maybe it's just a case of her story because right now her story isn't anything other than revenge and finding out who she is, and it's a little bit like a Hallmark Christmas movie. You've got the city girl going to this little like town in the middle of nowhere to find herself,
Mm.
and it's that kind of core concept, but with the gang violence following her there, and her problem in the big city isn't, oh, I'm a lawyer and it's stressful. It's, oh, I work for the most dangerous man in New York. I tried to kill him. He's not really dead now. The problem's following me. Um, so I don't think we get a conclusion in the sense of necessarily a big fight scene, but rather her deciding what's next on her journey. And if we think back to our character profile
Mm.
last week, 2 weeks ago, there was a bit after she discovered that her dad had killed Kingpin, which isn't
Uh,
exactly what happens here, but he caused
Kingpin
it.
had killed her dad. Mm.
Yeah. That she went back to her family's
Mm.
area and she did her vision quest, which I think is
Yeah.
kind of where we're
What
getting the
this is.
flashbacks to her ancestors, and it's
Yeah.
kind of just her coming to terms with who she is and actually working out what she wants. Because right now, I feel like she's just kind of doing what she thinks she should be doing. I killed the boss, or so she thought. So now I need to make my move and become the boss.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think maybe the conclusion will be in some way, sort of a way like Kingpin essentially gives her an out. More so being like, if you don't come back and you stop messing with my business, I won't hunt you, sort of thing.
Yeah,
But if you do any of those things, know that like nothing has changed. I will then come after you, and maybe that's where it ends, and so then she can go on to become whatever is next for her.
because
Um,
we also know Kingpin's got a weird relationship with people, especially this version of
yeah,
Kingpin, where his version of love and anger and everything is so twisted
yeah,
that her shooting him in the face he probably doesn't view as a huge issue. He'll view
yeah,
that as, oh, you only
possibly.
did that because you care. I'm still your uncle. I won't be surprised if his entire plan is something like, I mean, we know Kingpin, like in the comics, has been like the mayor of New York and shit like that.
Mm,
And with Daredevil Reborn and stuff like that, we know Wilson Fisk was moving into potentially a position of power when that happened.
yeah.
So maybe this ends with him like, okay, you take over the criminal side so that I can try and keep my hands clean.
Oh, maybe
And
that's
like her
potential.
strong backbone is something he views as like, uh, yes, you shot me in the face, but I know where I stand with you.
Yeah, true. It'll be yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how it kind of wraps up in the next 2 episodes and where it
But
ends
yeah,
for the future.
what we've seen in the first 3 episodes, I don't feel like this series needs a full conclusion. I
No,
feel like I'm okay for this to just set up a season 2.
yeah, that's true.
as long as there is a character development conclusion,
Yes.
which I think is going to be her rebuilding her relationship with her family potentially, or coming to
Yeah.
terms with her heritage or something like that. I think that's going to be okay. Obviously, it depends how they execute it,
Hmm.
but I think right now I'd be okay with that being the kind of conclusion to this. What I will say is, it doesn't feel like a Marvel Disney Plus show in the way it's shot. It feels like they've actually shot a TV show. It
Yeah, it
feels
does
like they've
feel
actually
different.
gone to locations and actually filmed stuff and
Yeah,
not thrown people in front of green screens and shot it haphazardly.
I
Going
know what you
back to
mean.
this kind of thing they were talking about where they were just green lighting everything and giving people money and no oversight, you
Mm,
can tell that someone's gone, no, let's actually do a pilot here and make sure we're making a TV show.
yeah, I get you.
It feels more put together.
Mm.
One fun story that I've seen that I wanted to share. I forget her name, which is terrible. The actress who plays Maya,
Oh,
um,
so bad
Alaqua
with
Cox,
names.
Alaqua, Alaqua Cox,
Hmm.
is obviously missing an amputee and deaf in real life.
Yeah.
Um, one story she told was the day she turned up to set, the person who meted her, greeted her, and took her inside, signed her to say hello. And it turns out a lot of the cast and crew had taken ASL courses over Zoom together, so that they had
Oh.
like a conversational amount of
Mm.
ASL, sorry, so that they could communicate with her like a human being on set instead of her having to just rely on an interpreter at all times.
Yeah.
Um, which is nice. It's one of the things that I wish was easier to do was to learn sign language. I don't mean like a case of, oh, you can learn anything if you really want to. I mean like in schools.
Yeah, it's
Like
one
a
of
lot
those
of
where they should
schools in
teach
the
it.
UK have like a GCSE for like a language.
It should be.
I I ended up dropping my GCSE for a language. If I could have taken British
I did
Sign
German.
Language, yeah, if I could have taken like British Sign Language, or I forget what the other major one used over here is, I absolutely would have.
Yeah.
And it's just it's nice to see the effort being made so that, like, if we're being honest, Aqualana Cox is very important for diversity. You can have
Yeah.
amputees who feel like they can relate to her. You can have deaf people who can feel like you can relate to her. She's Native American, which is also a massive minority. So she's going to potentially be the idol for a lot of people here. Let's have the common courtesy to try and speak their language.
Mm.
It's like when people mock someone who like has broken English. It's like they're speaking English because that's the only language you speak. It's not the only language they speak. Have a
Yeah.
little bit of respect. It's the exact same thing. She can't communicate with you because the problems that come along with being deaf make it so difficult to speak.
Mm.
At least make an effort to speak with her. She's been trying to live in your world this entire time. Let's meet halfway. So
Yeah.
it's really nice to see them steps being made, and hopefully that can be more commonplace in just in
Yeah, it
general.
would be good to see.
But it's been
Sure.
very very cool to see the characters interact with sign language being there all the time in all the
Mm.
interactions. Um, and it's felt quite natural as well. They've not felt a need to show the hands constantly, but you can always see that they're moving the hands to talk.
Yeah.
Um, and I've thought it's been really really good, and the action has been fucking awesome, and I
The
will not
fights
hear
have been
otherwise.
good.
It's been so good. And her new leg that she got at the end of episode 3 looks dope.
Yeah, that does actually look sick. It'd be pretty cool if she
Um,
gets to keep that IRL.
imagine they just like
Yeah,
make
you
one
can.
that's functional. But yeah, it's been really, really cool so far. I'm looking forward to the next couple of episodes. It looks like she's potentially heading back to New York in episode 4.
Oh, okay.
So it'll be interesting to see how that goes over there and what we get and where this story ends up and where it leaves us with Marvel Spotlight going forward.
Yeah.